So thank you very much for having me here. So before we get going, I want you guys to do a small calculation for me. What would be 18 multiplied by 60? That's right, 1080 seconds I have to share years of my journey with you. So I would want to begin with the Kobe Bryant story. So in year 2016, I came across this video of Jay Williams, who was sharing his story about how he arrived at the court hours before his match against Kobe's team. So when Jay arrives there, he was thinking that he would put in that extra hours of training and he would perform the best and his team would win. And he gets a shock of his life because when he arrives at the court, he could hear the ball bouncing. So he goes on to find out where is it coming from, who's the one who's practicing. And he discovers that Kobe was already practicing, covered in dead sweat. So Jay Williams starts training. He trains for an hour and a half, and then he plans to leave. While he could still hear the same sound of ball, he could still hear the noise. And then finally, Kobe finishes in another next 25 minutes. As expected, Jay's team lost to Kobe's team. Jay goes to Kobe and he asks Kobe, why do you do that? Then comes the epic response because Kobe tells him, and I quote, I saw you coming and I wanted to tell you that no matter how hard you train, I'm willing to train harder. And that's where your first lesson is. Extraordinary success comes with extraordinary efforts. And that's what Kobe Bryant defined for me. That's what he represented for me. And that's why I shared his story at the start of my presentation. If 40% of you remember what I'm telling you or sharing with you today, I would have actually left an impact. I have created an impact, and that is your lesson number 2. The lesson number 2 should be, don't aim for a name, don't aim for fame or for money. Always aim for having an impact on people's life, and rest would just follow. Moving on to my personal story that I want to share with you. So, I want to tell you about how Aditi failed. So for many of you, or I would say majority, chooses to focus on this. So when people talk about failure, what do they talk about? They tend to focus on the first 4 letters. That is FAIL. When I fail, I choose to focus on last 4 letters. Because every time I fail, I'm lured by success. So many of you know that I'm a journalist, but do you know that I'm a journalist without a degree? That's why I want to share this story. It was not because I didn't try to get a degree in journalism. It was because I failed to get through the top institutes, and I deliberately mentioned top because I would never settle for less. I tried again next year and I failed again. There was nobody in my family who would have been a journalist before. So for my family, for me, it was an uncharted territory. Probably, I had that passion that was required to pursue it as a career. And this passion and the will to keep going probably showed me the way. So through one of my professor's friends, I managed to line up a meeting with a well-renowned journalist who was working with a top brand. But that wasn't it. This gentleman first kept postponing the meeting. He would always tell me, call me next week, call me after 2 days, call me after 3 days. So it went on and on. And it took me 8 weeks to convince him to meet him. He asked me to come to his office, and I went, and then I waited. I waited for long hours. So much so that the guard there had started sympathizing with me. The guard was sympathizing with me. Can you believe it? For the gentleman, he comes out to meet me after hours. He doesn't even give me 5 minutes. He bluntly told me I could never become a journalist without a degree. No chance. I remember I was heartbroken. I was angry. The fighter in me would just refuse to give up. I remember I called my mentor, and the first line that I said, I would go back to the same office, but on the other side of the glass door. Because that glass door was the difference between me and the gentleman. And by the way, it happened. It actually happened. The same organization made an offer to work with them after 4 years. So the lesson for you, don't give up on your dreams just because people don't believe in it. Chase your dreams because they are your dreams. And it's your responsibility to realize those dreams if you really believe in them. Well, I never wanted to become a sports journalist, first of all. I wanted to become a political analyst. But I would not fit the tag, or I would not fit the bill. One, I didn't have gray hair. And second, I was a woman. So it was a challenge for me. It was difficult for me, to be honest. But I somehow kept persisting. And then one day, there weren't enough people on the sports desk. So my editor, Mr. Vishnu Shankar, he came and he asked me, would you go and cover a golf story? Golf story? Aditi, Tyagi? Believe you me, before that I had never heard anything about golf. And then I took it upon me as a challenge and I said, okay, fine, I would go. I would file the story. I did my homework. I'm telling you all these stories so that you know how important is the homework. I did my homework. I sat down with people who were experts in golf and I tried to get the basics so that when I go to the tournament, I know what I'm talking. And I'm asking the right sort of questions. So my work clicked, and from there, the journey of Aditi the reporter started. I started getting more assignments. I started doing everything that came my way with the hope that I'm getting closer to the dream, to my dream, my goal of becoming a political analyst. And at the same time, I also started doing impactful stories in my current role as a sports journalist. So in 2006, would you know who was the most powerful man in Indian cricket? So how you got it right? It was Greg Chappell. It was Greg Chappell. He was more powerful than the players. So I would go to my editor and I would tell him that I want to interview Greg Chappell. Before my editor could respond, I could hear people laughing around me. And some of them went, she would interview Greg Chappell. Greg Chappell would do an interview with her. She's a kid. But my editor, he gave me the go ahead. And with due permissions, I went. I chased Greg Chappell to the hotel where the Indian team was staying before their match against Sri Lanka. So I was in the hotel. I waited for hours. And then Greg told me that I need to come back someday. He would not have time on that day. So on the other hand, I started getting calls from the office asking me what happened to the interview. I sat in a dark room for a couple of hours. But then again, there was another day. I had to chase that story. I had to chase this man. So I went again and my wait started on the second day. After a couple of hours, my editor called me up and he asked me, don't waste your day like yesterday. I got the message. I went to the house phone. I could manage Greg over the phone. And because I was furious and I wanted to hit back, by then I had decided that it doesn't matter if I don't get the interview. But this man must remember who he was dealing with. So I straight away went and I said, if your time is precious, so is mine, Greg. It probably would have been foolish of me to say that to a powerful person. But actually, it worked. and the interview happened, and I could answer the very people who were a day before calling me and asking me what happened to the interview. So the crux of this story is you have to believe in yourself before the world starts believing in you. Because if you don't believe in yourself, nobody would. For me, sports is a way of life. So during my stint as a sports journalist, I always wanted to find out how a champion thinks. How do they respond under pressure? How they tackle pressure? How they answer their critics? How they take criticism? I got an opportunity to see all these champions from close quarters. How would they prepare for a big game? Through my interactions with them, I could find out how do they think and why are they different from the crowd. So the one thing that I figured out in one sentence, they didn't try something new. They would do the old same thing but in a different and a better way. And more than that, they believed in themselves. They believed in their strengths. In my life, I never got things easy, to be honest. So far, whatever I've told you, you know that I didn't get it on platter. I had to work hard. So, for anchoring, you need to get your tapes approved. You know how many tapes I made? How many tapes? In 12 months' time, I had submitted 12 tapes to get approval, to be approved as an anchor. It took me 12 months, 10 days to go on air as an anchor, despite having years of experience as a journalist. So nothing comes easy in life. You have to put in the hard work. You have to pay the price. The success has to be earned. It is not served on platter. So moving forward, I always had international dreams. Always. So I started reaching out to the foreign universities as early as 2008. Most of the universities I never got through. And some of the opportunities that came my way, I couldn't take them up due to financial constraint. But I would keep trying. I would try my heart out and then I would start trying again. So I would try, I would fail, I would try, I would fail. So I kept trying again and again and again and again, but I would not succeed. But as they say, everything happens in God's time. So, listen to me very carefully. Almost after a decade, I got this opportunity to join a sports leadership program in Switzerland. And it was a program that was founded by none other than International Olympic Committee. So 10 years of struggle, leaving me nowhere, and it came at a time when I had established myself as one of the faces of the channel that I was working for. So it was not an easy choice for me, but I had this international dream and I had to chase that dream. So I ended up being in Switzerland, in the Olympic city of Lausanne, and 40 kilometers away from Geneva. Even then, I was tested. I'm not a management person. I don't enjoy discussing the principles and the concept of management. So I had to, as part of the program, I had to appear for this marketing exam. So while appearing for this marketing exam a day before, I was really nervous and all kinds of negative things were coming to my mind. I was asking myself, who the hell in this world has told me to come on this program and go through this trial? Why have I come here? What am I here for? Why am I putting myself through this test? I was doing so well in India. Why am I here? All these questions coming to my mind and I was really, really nervous. Really nervous. You can't even imagine how nervous I was. So I called my mother in India, and it has been a custom that we would have a cup of tea together. We would share a cup of tea together before my exam. She handed over the phone to my father, and my father instantly asked me, "Are you ready?" And I felt like a big lump in my throat. Before I could answer him, he said two sentences. And he went like, हारना नहीं है, हारना नहीं है. Quitting is not an option for Aditi. Just 2 sentences. My father still doesn't know what it meant to me. I scored 5.5 out of 6. But those 2 sentences did the trick for me. So, respect people who believe in you. Because you may have a bad day, you may not succeed, you should always have people to return to. So, respect people. Excellence in sports, they say excellence is a lonely pursuit. But no one can succeed alone. So going back to the international dream part again, I have this Taekwondo coach on the same program. And because I have faced a lot of pressure in terms of my public scrutiny. So I asked him, and this Taekwondo coach had produced many Olympic medalists. So I went to him and I asked him, his name is TEDxIIMSirmaur. I asked him how to tackle your critics. So this gentleman told me, when they are looking down on me, it's their problem. But the moment I start responding to that, it becomes my problem. So it's up to you whether you want it to remain their problem or you want to make it your problem. So moving back to the international dreams, in Lausanne, I had a wonderful opportunity to take up a lucrative offer with one of the best sports bodies and live an easy life in Switzerland, but I always aimed high. I wanted to move to a UN agency. And then the door opened. I went to make a presentation to UNESCO in Paris. It was about gender equality in sports. And you know, because you already heard my introduction, I made it. I got that opportunity and I lived in Paris for next 1 year. Before I conclude my presentation, I want to talk about this man. My mom is actually an explorer. He is known for his work with the Indian cricket team in 2011 World Cup. He worked with the German football team in 2014 World Cup. And he says, and his quote is right here, if your dreams don't scare you, they are too small. So since the start, I've been telling you dream big. You know what's my next dream? I want to go on an expedition with him. Go and think your dreams.